Hello everyone. So this is other step of microservice in and out course. So in video number 9 we learn how to implement auth server, and in video number 10 we learn how to secure our services along with the auth server. And video number 11, last video, we learned about how we can control access level based on the user role along with the auth server as well as resource server. So now with all those things we know up to certain level how we can work with auth server, resource server and also access controls. So if you just find this video, I encourage you to go back to this playlist and come from the beginning, because these are continuation videos. If you get this video, one video isolate, you may able to understand if you have some background, but if you're fresh or if you're intermediate, you may struggle to understand this video. So if you're new to microservice or if you don't have a strong understanding about the microservice, I encourage you to go back to this playlist and come from the beginning. Anyway, so let's see today what we are going to do. So now in last video, what we have done is we use our auth server and also we use our resource server, and we use Postman or other REST client to invoke this. So we don't do this in the industry. We don't use REST client to invoke our services. Rather than we use probably web application. So last video in the so far the example what we have done, we followed password credential flow. So that means we provide username and password to the application. That application talk to auth server. So this is okay in a certain scenarios. Other scenarios we need something called authorization code flow. So this is how you should decide which flow to use. Let's say you have an auth server in your company, right? And you have a resource server and you are implementing some front-end application. To work with this resource server, your front-end application expect your credentials. So say this is your Office application. So this is only open to the Office network, and also this is trusted. The trusted mean your one of Office application asking your official credentials. So that is okay to provide. So in that case, we can trust the client, right? So you have auth server, resource server, and your web application is the client. You can trust the client. So you can provide the username and password. So such a scenario, you are okay to implement the user password credential flow. But let's assume that Office application expecting your Facebook password or your GitHub account password, your personal email account password. In that case, you're a little bit scared to give, right? Because you don't know what they're going to do with this username and password. So in such cases, we don't implement password credential flow. In other words, if we cannot trust the client, if you see that user will not trust the client, if user will hesitate to trust the client, you need to implement authorization code flow. So this is how this flow works. So when let's say you have an authorization server, you have a resource server, and you have a client. When user trying to access the client through resources through the client, if user is not authenticated, this client will redirect user into the authorization server, right? So authorization server is the place user created the user account, right? In that case, user can log into authorization server. User will not scared to do that because they create the account with that server. For example, Google. So you can see there are certain websites say sign in with Google, sign in with Facebook. In such cases, Google and Facebook act as authorization server, right? So when you try to say sign in with Google, it directly redirect you into the Google. Then Google pop up their dialog box, their login dialog box to enter our username and password. We always do that, right? So we are not scared. If you decide to authorize the Facebook, Facebook will show Facebook login dialog box as to enter the username and password, right? So though we are trying, let's say we are trying to access the rent-a-car application, right? So my rent-a-car system asking my Google username and password, we don't like to give it. But if the rent-a-car application redirect me to the Google website, and that Google website asking itself the username and password, then we can give it, right? So that is called authorization code flow. So if you confuse this flow, go back to I think it's the 7th or 8th video. So using nice diagrams, I explain how this flow works, right? Step by step how this flow works, right? So how this 1, 2, 3, 4 step works. So if you confuse this, I'm not spending time to explain that in this video, rather than you go back to the previous video and you can see that. So today we are going to implement that, right? So for that, I'm going to use the authorization server what we implemented so far, and like I have it here. So it's running, and then I have my profile service that's also running, right? So I'm going to generate a token from authorization server, right? I get this token, right? So now, so you can see, so to get the token, I'm passing my username and password, right? That means your application is supposed to get this from the user, and then I'm going to use this token here, and I'm going to access this service. Now I can access it, right? So that is the password credential flow. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use authorization code flow. For that we need some web application, right? So let's create some web application. I am going to create it from here, but if you don't have this feature with your IDE, so in the very first video we explained how to do that with the spring.io site. So I go here, okay, dot. So I'm going to name this as a rent UI. So for the as a dependencies, I'm going to add the web dependency, and also cloud auth 2 dependency, cloud security dependency, and also since we need some UI framework, I'm going to use a theme leaf as my UI framework. Right, so it's created my UI, right? So here I'm going to create controller. So I'm going to create a controller. It's named as a UI controller, right? So far we name as a REST controller because we didn't have any UI component, right? But here you have a UI component. So rather REST controller, I'm going to name this as a controller, right? So now let's create a one method, public so I'm going to return index here, right? And request mapping, I'm going to set the value as home, right? So what this is supposed to do, whenever you load the when you go to the root, it's supposed to return the index, right? Right, so now I'm going to create this file. See, I'm going to create a file for the root of my application. So let's make this as a home, so that is little meaningful. So what I'm going to do is here, I'm going to create this file here. Make sure you create the file from the same name you given here. So since I gave a home, I'm going to create a home.html file, right? So you have a file here. You can create this as the basic HTML, right? Like this, or else you can use something like a bootstrap. So using a bootstrap is very easy. Bootstrap is a UI framework, and which has some built-in nice CSS and functions. So I'm not going to explain bootstrap in detail. You have few options. Either you can directly copy this, right, or you can directly copy this one because it has all the HTML tags as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste it here, right? So this is nothing but, so this is a head tag, right? It has some metadata and the same bootstrap link through the CDN. CDN means the content delivery network. So there it has some scripts, right, which support to bootstrap, which you don't need by default. So in a bootstrap, let's say this head one, I'm going to remove this, right? And here I'm going to use a div and class as a container, right? So bootstrap work everything as a container. You can use a container or container fluid, right? So container, and then I'm going to use other div here, and here I'm going to use a class as a jumbotron, right? So jumbotron is a the built-in class which give the nice look box on top of your page, right? And here I'm going to use a h1. Let's say welcome to Rent Cloud. Okay, so this is just my home page. Okay, so that's it. What I'm going to do is now I'm going to run this, right? So keep in mind we haven't done any security implementation yet, but since we have added dependencies, okay, it says I cannot run this one application because last time I run the profile service here. So I'm going to shut down the profile service. I don't need that anymore. So let's run this again. Okay, so since we have added cloud auth and cloud security dependencies, you can see here it generating default password, right? So I'm going to copy this, right? And because itself it's by default it's secured, so now I'm going to say localhost 8080. So now it is saying okay, give your username and password. I'm going to username as user and the password as the one we copied, right? So now you can see directly go to your page, right? So now you can see it says welcome to Rent Cloud, and this small gray box is come from this jumbotron, right? So you can build very nice UIs with very easily with the bootstrap, right? So now our task is not the bootstrap, so our task is to secure this. So now you can see here, if I go to the localhost again, it will go directly because we already given the username and password. So I'm going to use the incognito window here, so that make our life easy, right? So now it says okay, please login. But this is basic authentication, right? We cannot do this. We need to this go along with auth authentication, right? With our auth server. So how I can do this? What I need to do here, come back to the UI controller and I'm going to say enable oAuth SSO, right? So enable oAuth to SSO, right? So with this way, now this UI service knows I need to authenticate from oAuth server, right? So now we need to tell what is the oAuth server we need to implement, authenticate, right? Use. So rather than the properties, I prefer to go for YAML, right? So I go here, I need to tell what is my auth server, right? So what is the client ID I can use for this? So my client ID is mobile, right? So remember, I'm depending on the auth server we created the video 9, right? So these credentials I was providing over there, right? And then I'm going to use client ID and the secret, right? So secret is pin. I have given the secret as a pin. So now I have given the client ID and the secret. So now this can access the auth server. Now I need to tell what is the endpoint to authorize the user authorization URI, right? So user authorization URI is the same URI where what you use here to get the token, but the difference is here is not the token, we need to say authorized, right? And also we need to say token, access token URI, right? Access token URI would be the same URI, right? So it should say HTTP and also HTTP, okay? So now we have given enough information to this to use. So now we need to tell how we can validate this token, right? So for that we need to say token info URI, right? So token info URI. So this is the same URI where you use for this check token, right? This one, right? So here not the token but check token, right? So now it has enough information, right? It has a client ID, secret, and this access token URI, and as well as authorization URI, right? So now it has enough information to go back to our authorization server. So now we'll see what happened here, right? So I'm going to rerun this. Okay, we didn't disable the basic code, so it still generated the password, so that's fine. So I'm going to get an incognito window. and localhost 8080. So now you can see here it redirected to 9191, which is my auth server, right? It redirected to 9191. So the last time it did not redirect it, right? So this time it redirected to 9191. So if you want to see that again, so let's say let's go back here and let's disable this enable auth, right, and rerun this. Okay, so now you are going to give localhost 8080, right? So you can see here this time it's a localhost 8080 login, which means the login of the same service. But when we enable this enable auth to SSO, what it does is it redirected the request into the auth server itself, right? It does not try to authenticate over same service, right? So now my this service run on a 8080, my auth server run on a 9191. So now I'm going to do is localhost 8080. So you can see it redirected over here. So now I can give my username and my password, right? So now it's asking authorization part, or otherwise a consent screen. It says you have a read scope and the write scopes what you want to approve. So I'm going to say approve both. So now it come back here and back to the same login screen, right? It come back to the same login screen. So there can be multiple reasons here. So one is it come back to the login. Okay, I'll show you how to debug this. So you can go inspect here and go to the network tab, right? So you go to the network tab. So let's try to say localhost 8080. Now look, you can see here it go to the localhost 8080 302. 302 mean we need to see the location header, right? So it says go back to 8080 login. So when you go to 8080 login, it redirecting you to the auth server. So now you go to the auth server login. It's asking username and password. So I'm going to my username and password. So it come back to the authorization or as consent screen. So now I'm going to clear this and see what's happening here. From authorization server, it says, okay, go back to localhost 8080 login. It go back to the login, right? And see here, so now I'm on the localhost 8080 login, which is my UI service login screen. So there it redirected back to here and it come back to authorization server. So what's happened here, though it generate the token, the UI service don't see this token, right? UI service don't see this token because we didn't set up any mechanism it to see that, right? So what I can do is I go back to my UI service and here I'm going to tell cookie. I'm going to set a cookie here. Let's say I'm going to say K session. This can be anything, right? So K session I'm giving just so you don't mix up with the standard cookies, right? So I'm going to rerun this. Okay, it's cool. Let's go back to new window and localhost 8080. It redirected. So Krish, okay, pass and access. Okay, so now it's cool. So now, but it has now new problem, right? It come back to the login. It says too many redirections, right? It's redirection too many times. So let's go back to my here. Okay, it says specific part is missing. Okay, I'm missing in the HTTP here. It's my bad. So let's try again. Okay, and generate new. Okay, it's running. So now go back again. Localhost 8080. Krish. Okay, pass. Okay, now it come back here. Now you are in the rent cloud. Now everything work as expected, but I forgot to tell you one thing, one change you need to make, right? So if you see here in our script, right, in authorization server, in the script it says code is set to your URL set to redirect URL set to 8080 code, right? So now if this is in the database as the code, it will not work, right? So why in our case why it worked? Because I changed this manually. I forgot to mention that. So now I change back to the code. If you directly out of the box execute this is how you get it, right? So we'll see how that's end. So localhost 8080, so it go here, right? So Krish, and then kpass, right? So you can see here it says it does not match your 8080 login to 8080 code, because Spring by default try to set the 8080 login, but in our case, in our client, it says 8080 code, 8080 code, right? So it says okay, so I'm trying to redirect to login, but you're asking for a code that does not exist in your profile. So how we can fix this? The easiest way to fix this from the database for now, right? But when you can change this to login, right? So this in the auth client detail, you can change this to login, right? The permanent solution is, right? So permanent solution is you can drop this database, okay? So you don't need this anymore. So you drop the database completely and go back to your the authorization server code and change this to login and execute again, right? So now it's executing. So now this will create all the necessary records again. Now change this to txt to prevent further execution on next run, right? So now we changed it, right? So if you go back here and auth database and table auth client details, now you can see it has login, right? So now this is why it's worked before, right? Because I did this change before I execute this program, but I forgot to mention. I'm sorry. Now you know. If you face the same problem, now you know how to fix it. Now go back again, 8080 Krish, right? So kpass, and now it's go to this screen and authorize. Now it's working, right? So but I'm interested to show you how this is working, right? And let's go back to inspect and to see, to get it clear how this the behind the scene happens. So localhost 8080, so it asking localhost 8080, then it go back to 8080 login, and the 8080 login itself is redirecting back to 9191 our auth server, right? So now auth server asking authorize URL. See here, authorize, this is the one we given in the property file. So now authorize URL, we need to provide our username and password, right? So now authorize URI, it says route back to 8080 login, which is mean original application UI service login endpoint. And here you can see in the K session, which is the session cookie ID we given, it passing our token. So that's why UI sees that token. So now if you go little further move from here, right? So you can see now any URI is secured. But I want to implement this. Certain pages are secured, but certain pages are not secured, right? I don't want to have every page secured. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to make this as welcome to Ren Cloud, which is not secured, right? This is public, right? So this is public, and I'm going to create other page, right, called secure.html, right? And I'm going to paste the same code here, right? I'm going to paste the same code, but this time I'm going to say this is secured page, right? So this is secured page. So in the UI controller, I'm going to change this, right? If someone asks for secure page, right, it has to load the secure HTML, right? So load secured UI, right? So load secured UI. Okay. So now this scenario is what? So you have a two pages, one is a secured page, other one is a home page, right? So this one, so this one supposed to load by default without any authentication, and other page should not work like that. So I'm going to close this and go back to here, localhost 8080. It's still prompting the login because I did not configure this home is to load without any security. So what I'm going to do is I can extend this from web security configure adapter, right? And from that I can override HTTP security, right? So I'm going to override the HTTP security, right? So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell HTTP, right, authorize request, all the requests supposed to authorize. However, the request matching to this path permit all, right? So permit this, if it is matching to this given path, so permit that to all, and any request authenticated, right? Any other request has to authenticate it. So what I'm saying, ignore this URI, it does not need to authenticate it, so you can permit that to all, and any other request should authenticate it. So restart again and go back here. I mean, you need to do certain new things that you can switch off the basic security, so and few more tweaks to do this. So now let's go back here, localhost 8080. So now it says public page, it did not prompted any username and password box, but the moment you're trying to go to secure page, so it prompting you login dialog box, right? So again, localhost 8080 will not prompt anything, but if you try to go to access secure page, it asking, hey, you cannot go there, provide me username and password. So now I'm going to giving my username and password, Krish, okay, pass, and it come back here to secure page, right? So now the next time if I try to access the same URL, see what's happening in this magic network tab, right? So localhost 8080/secure, right? Now I already logged into this, so now it requesting this page from to log into this page, but meantime you can see here in the request header it pass in the original token, right? It passing this original token. So therefore this token go back to our auth server, and auth server validate this token. So therefore it says no, you don't need to log in because you already logged in, so I can let you go in. Okay, so now it was a little lengthy, but I hope you understand. If you have any questions, please comment here. And I have seen some people says in the previous video this it didn't work for them, and I don't know why. If you could share your GitHub URL or something to my Twitter account, so I can look into that. But I would suggest you just download my working project from the GitHub, right? And I promise it will work. You just need to change your username and password to your MySQL username and password, and make sure you use Java 8, and then you can compare your code with my code, then you can understand where it went wrong. Okay, so see you soon in the next video, where we have so many things to do. We need to use the implement circuit breaker pattern, we need to implement the discoveries, API gateway, so many things to do. I'll see you in the next video very soon. Till then, stay safe, take care.